have helped put up to honor the herring cowics, that honor the sacred relationship that Kinkley people have with the herring and the role they play in their way of life. These ceremonies were powerful and the focal point for a broader movement that brought dozens of people out to testify for the protection of herring and in support of Sitka tribe of Alaska at the Board of Fish, to make art, to undertake a symbolic canoe voyage to protest at the Alaska Department of Fish and Game, local offices, and more. So, with further ado, I will ask Louise Brady to come and join us.
That means I'm tired, but energized. We can be more than one thing at once. I'm really humbled and honored to be up here. And I'm feeling the need to start with a song. So this is a song that was composed for the herring. I composed it last year, and I'm going to sing it without a drum, I guess. And I haven't memorized it yet, even though I composed it. Ah, hey, ah, hey, ah, hey. Ah, hey, ah, hey, ah, hey. Our history, thing of people, it's told in our songs, it's told in our stories, it's told in our adu. Our adu are the carved hats, if you're familiar with those, the robes, the ceremonial robes. And for me, when I sing, I am inviting my ancestors to be here with me on the Nughelnik land, to be able to provide strength and the words that may be difficult for me. The translation, if you saw the film last night, we have an original instruction, K'asheechtlaa, our clan, that talks of a woman a young lady who, in the springtime, would go down to the beach in K'asheechtlaa, and she would sing to the herring. And this is while everybody else in the village was getting ready for all of the harvesting seasons that were coming. And a lot of the people thought that she was being lazy, that she didn't want to help get ready for the salmon that were coming, and get ready for the berries that were coming. And actually what she was doing, she was singing to the herring and inviting them. For those of you, how many of you were in K'asheechtlaa for the herring cooking? It's beautiful. There were so many, it's just unbelievable the way that the Sitka sound, the way that K'asheechtlaa comes to life. And K'asheechtlaa, because of the honor that this young lady showed to the herring, we have Yautei, or the herring rock in K'asheechtlaa. So K'asheechtlaa is the very first place in all of Southeast that the herring come to. And we have stories that go back for many, many, many generations about how thousands of people would come and join us in K'asheechtlaa. And so it's really, really incredibly special and beautiful for me to remember that. And the words are also really special as well, because they translate, we sing to you, you give us strength, we cherish you, you warmed our spirit. And this is the way I'm feeling about being here and being in this room with all of you. So this is my gratitude to all of you and to everybody who's been a part of this community for the last few days. And I definitely will carry it with me as I leave here tonight. There's really something special about being able to understand what ceremony is, and to be able to understand truly that ceremony does not only happen in churches. It doesn't happen only in prescribed ways, but it happens when we come together and we have the thoughts and we share our energy with each other. It doesn't even matter if we're in the same room. And I was a part of a gathering here in Anchorage many years ago, and we were told a story, and we were given painted stakes. And the story was told that when the Plains Indians were ready to battle each other individually, they would place a stake in the ground. Each warrior would, and tie themselves to that stake, and would promise that they would not retreat any further than that stake would allow them. And this is what this is us fighting together, and we aren't going to retreat, we're going to keep moving forward. One of the other things that we were told that we could do is to take those stakes with us, and at every full moon, intentionally pray for all of the other stakeholders. And I believe that this is something that I really want to bring back in my personal life, is that to pray for all of you and to pray for all of us who are working as hard as we can for a just transition and for a world that honors the earth and all of us that enjoy our lives on this land and in the oceans. I'm not really, my voice is shaking, but I'm not really a public speaker. Gonna cheat. You're giving me some strength. And, I know that this work isn't done in a vacuum. And so I've asked two young people to come and join me and to stand with me. And these are two of the robes that were created. One was created 2 or 3 years ago. I worked with a woman back in K'asheechtlaa. And as I told you, our history is told through our Adhu, and we have specific ways of dedicating Adhu. And happens at our ceremonies, at our ku'iks. The red one was dedicated this year. So if you saw it come off for the very first time in K'asheechtlaa. And then the blue one was dedicated 2 years ago in K'asheechtlaa. And coming from the story of the herring lady, I had requested a friend of mine who was trained in design. I talked to her, I told her the story of the herring lady and asked her to help me create a robe that would symbolize the young lady sitting on the rock and the herring swimming around that rock. So this is what we came up with. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Shakshani Shaya Sai Klingit. Amgun with Daxati, Canadian Kiaya, Chadekanago, Ishas, Canadi, Akhish Station Tan, Kanchish, Kicksadi. Shakshani Ish, a child of NAD over in Angun, as well as grandchild of Deshi Tan. And I just wanted to thank Louise Brady, K'asheechtlaa Brady, who had asked me to dance this robe once before. And this robe, when they talk about how heavy it was, it's heavier than any robe I've danced, but not in the sense of just the materials, but the things that it carries. Louise explained about how heavy it is and the things that it carries, how each design is very intentional and tells a story and how it talks. And so when I danced this robe, it felt heavier because of the weight it carries, because of the stories it carries and the intention behind it. And so when I dance this robe, I have to ask my ancestors to dance with me. And this last time I was very fortunate and I had access to go into the ocean after to make sure that I took care of myself after dancing this robe because it was so heavy in that matter. But I'm so honored that Louise had reached out to dance this robe. And so I just wanted to say good K'asheech and
Aanveen dat K'asheech te خطو ساكيخ الخطتي قنية قانية خطس كتقية موهاكتي خا شبن خريطة قن قابا دان تتقن خير دو إشخاص نفتيش نقصاني شعالتني نكيني نفين نفتيش I'm Kik Mifte, I'm from Yakutat, and was honored that our auntie asked me to be the raven. The balance of powers between the eagle and the raven or an opposite side. Any aspect of how Tlingit are Tlingit. And so when we're here as the eagle and the raven balance of power for our beloved auntie.
So, for those of you who were in K'asheechtlaa or who have ever been to a ku'i or a potlatch, I guess what some people call it, is we tried our best. I think we shortened the ku'i to 12 hours. So I'll shorten this as well. I promise I won't keep you any more than an hour or two. And I feel like I need to, call up like all of my relatives and but I'll restrain myself. But I need to acknowledge, Naomi as so he's my grandfather's people, Kagwantan. And we are all related somehow, as well as Naomi, who I stood up here with this morning. She is Bushkita. And so she's also my ancestors, my great-grand. I carry the name K'asheechtlaa. And K'asheechtlaa was my great-grandmother, and her father was Wushkitan. So that would make that Naomi as part of my father's people. And, you know, I could go into many other people I'm related to here, but I won't. And then I wanted to acknowledge Jackson, Matthew Jackson, standing over there holding that left ball up. It's a very important job, and he always gets the most important jobs. Just kidding. Right, Jackson. He's one of the original herring protectors, and he was adopted into our clan and given a name. He is amazing. He flew back to Chica and brought the robes up. Anyway. Okay. So I did write some things down, and hopefully you will. Okay. Thank you for allowing me to be here on your beautiful sacred lands to speak my truth. K'asheechtlaa to Native Movement, Fairbanks Climate Action, Alaska Public Interest Research Group, Native Peoples Action, Alaska's Poor People Campaign, the Alaska Center, and the Alaska Community Action on Toxic. K'asheechtlaa to all of you who are working towards making our communities into places where we can all thrive, into places where we are all respected, into places where we are all loved, and to places where we are all safe. So I recently was a recipient of a fellowship, and I had to write about my theory of change, and it was recommended that I read the theory of change, look at the theory of change of movement generation. And so I really related to what was being said yesterday. And much of my theory of change is based on my personal life. I did not start my life as a success per the Western world. My life, beginning from the early teens into my mid-20s, was characterized by violence, both sexual and physical, followed by the inevitable addiction that comes from trauma, when it appears there are no other options. To escape this, I had to rely on people who guided me to a better life by offering solutions. These friends understood I had no trust in a world that had left me hopeless, bruised, and battered, and full of rage. In spite of all of the rage and the anger, these angels, these earthly angels, still supported me rather than shaming me about who I had become. My youth was much like today's world. It was filled with despair and hopelessness. Years of neglect and abuse of Mother Earth and all of our relatives has left little room for hope. In my youth, the stigma of my identity as a woman of color, and an addict made my world one of anger, isolation, and hopelessness. Today, my identity as a woman of color, a Tlingit woman, a Kiksadi woman, a K'asheechtlaa, a woman on a healing journey, is what gives me compassion and patience to work towards building a community based in the love and respect, not only for each other, but for what we refer to as the environment. It gives me what we need to be whole and a vision of that possibility. I've spent the last 25 years, 30 years of my life increasing my understanding of what it means to be a Tlingit woman who is healing from addiction, but more importantly, from colonization, which alienated me from my true history and ancestry. My true history is one of resilience, creativity, and strength. Our way of life is an answer to today's illnesses in this society. These illnesses are not only of the mind, but of the body, spirit, and it affects all of society. Our theory of change, yes, it must be based on saving what we love. The more I live and learn my culture, the more I love my culture and my people. We have a living and dynamic culture that can be shaped by challenges. We must repair our relationships with the natural world and follow our original instructions as given to us by Tekia Kahu, by Hashigenya, the Creator, and handed down to us from generation to generation. We must move from the Western view of resource commodification and extraction and create spaces where indigenous people and all people can survive and thrive by practicing our values of balance and ya'at une, respect for all things. We can, we will, we have protested against destructive and oppressive systems and policies. But even more importantly, we will continue to focus on the positive vision found in our original instruction and realized through our ceremony. This is the mentality that I bring to the work with herring protectors. Folks outside of our movement may mostly remember our strong presence in protests, comments, and testimony at the 2018 Board of Fisheries meeting, where we fought against overfishing and disrespect of our relatives, the herring, and of disrespect of Indigenous sovereignty. But where I felt the most change happen was in the many hours in community, preparing for the first Yauku'i, the herring ceremony. And we came together in 2016 following a rally first for Standing Rock, and then for, a fundraiser. And it was tough times. 2016 were, whoa, that was a challenge. And we had such a feeling of community and hope and through action that we wanted to work on something locally. And so when we met, there were probably maybe 6 of us, and they asked, well, what should we work on locally? And I suggested herring. And I didn't know what the other people, if they knew what herring were, what the issues were around herring, and they all said yes. And then we thought, well, what should we do? And I said, well, how about a ku'i? And they said, what's a ku'i? I said, well, I can't really explain. But let's get some red cedar, and let's get some rawhide, and let's have a potluck, and we shall start making gifts for this ku'i. So we did, and and we got to know each other, we got to trust each other, and we got to love each other as family. And I just cannot even begin to tell you how much love I feel for the people like Jackson, like Chandler, who some of you met, like Peter, like all of these people who have stood together throughout the years. And it's only been 5 or 6 years. I can't wait to see where we are in another 5. But so anyway, sometimes I use notes and sometimes I don't. And I'm trying to use notes and I just got lost. So bear with me. And so, when I learned about the movement generations theory of change, it did really resonated with me. And I really believe in taking direct action to meet our needs, not spectacle or demonstrations or even alternatives, but as imperatives. We must know that what the hands do, the heart learns, and put our hands not just to the fight, but to positive creation. And we must free our revolutionary imaginations from the constraints of politically possible to work on the outside of the status quo, to bring society and our communities to a better place. And I really believe that the work that we've been able to do and accomplish in so many different areas throughout the last 5 or 6 years has really done that, because we have used art, we have used rallies, we have used, most importantly, ceremony. And as you can see, I want to, okay, I'm gonna read. In Tlingit culture, so there's a lot of conflict, right? I mean, it's been, oh my God, the last 6 years have been crazy and really challenging. But in our culture, when we resolve conflict, we focus on preserving community. When I have managed conflict, I choose to pursue restorative justice rather than default to the lesser punitive approach. That's also what the Ku'ik is about, affirming responsibilities to each other to live in a good way. When we're in ceremony, we learn how to be in good relationship with each other. We have conflict without hurting each other. There is so much anger and hatred and division right now. We see now more than ever that ceremony is the key, and ceremony really is the ideal of community. Years ago, I visited a community for a Ku'ik as an invited guest. Many Ku'iks begin with what we call dressing. So in ceremony, right? Because Shokshadi Ish is my grandfather's people. If I were to wear a ceremonial robe, I would ask him to come and put it on me. And he would come and he would say, it's not me that is putting this on you, it is my ancestor, and speak the name of the ancestor, so that we're bringing the ancestors in to be with us with whatever we are celebrating or mourning. And so I had this opportunity to go to this community and visit. And we walked into the gym, and it just so happened to be that there were a group of clan leaders and culture bearers in the room. So there was one of the clan's moiety leaders had asked the other to use their hats and robes to instruct some high school students in ceremony, passing along the knowledge that they would need to be the next generation to do this. So there was one young person who was wearing a carved hat, which was probably a couple 100 years old. Their shoe was untied. I was sitting there watching. They were wearing a beautiful carved hat, and they looked amazing. And they bent over to tie their shoe. And this 200-year-old Atgu ancestor dropped to the floor and cracked and broke. And the room was silent. The whole room was silent. We all knew what had just happened. Even some of the clan leaders and the culture bearers started crying. We all just stood in this stunned silence of what are we going to do? And then almost organically, the one moiety met on one side of the room and the other moiety met on the other side of the room. In the meantime, this young person is laying across the table and crying and sobbing and hyperventilating because they thought they had just destroyed this Atgu. After a few minutes of talking, the moiety that owned the hat went over to her and they asked her, they said, please stand up. And the leader said, stand up. It wasn't your fault. It's not your fault. You don't need to feel bad. Please don't cry. And they stood up, and the clan leader went and got another hat and put it on them. And said, these are the risks that we have to take if we're going to move forward. What will happen is we will repair this hat and it will become part of the history. We can't move forward without taking risks. And so the hope, all of our hope, was that everybody got to leave and they were whole, including this young person who could have been ruined by this event. And I think that that's our job as a community, is when we have conflict, we can offer solutions to people. They can choose not to accept them. But how do we address the conflict in a loving way? How do we make sure that as communities we come out intact? And then yes, of course, some people aren't ready. Some people aren't ready to hear the solutions, and that's okay, we can let them go. That, I think, is one of the most powerful things I have ever witnessed, and I really hope that, that that's the kind of solutions that we come to when we, when we sit, when we take the time and understand that we don't have to live by the clock, that we get to live by whatever is best for our community. And, having been raised in the Western world, I'm constantly worried about the clock, and I don't know how much time I have left. But please feel free to tell me. So I really want to talk about this robe as well. So there are so many healings that have happened through reaching out to people. When we started working on the herring, with the original teaching of the herring lady, the K'asheechtlaa, the first year we had it, I wanted to ask somebody to make a tana, and people call them a shield, and people call them money. They're much more than that. People call them coppers. I believe it's the way that we show value, and money really has a very one-dimensional way of showing value. So with all of the female energy and rebirth and spring, things that were are attached to the herring, I went and asked this young woman that I really didn't know, Jennifer Younger, who's an amazing artist, and she made this beautiful herring tana, herring lady tana. I didn't bring it. And the next year, so we brought this one out first, and I thought, I think we need more herring robes. And so I went to Jennifer and Carol, who was my go-to people. And I said, so we need, I think, 5 more herring robes, so then we can compose a song, and we can have a herring lady song. And so they agreed to do it, and Jennifer designed these beautiful robes. I hope to show you some photos. And it's a set of 5 robes. And there's one is the herring lady, and the other ones are the herrings swimming across 5 robes. And the herring are swimming across the robes when they're all together in the form of the DNA. Because I heard somebody mention that our way of life is in our DNA, and it's true, the herring are part of our DNA. I know this because in the film, I don't know if you saw it, one of my great nieces, one of my great granddaughters, saw her the first time, her first taste of herring eggs fresh out of the water and off the hemlock branches. She took a bite and she started chewing, and she wasn't sure if you've ever tasted them or had them. They're very crunchy, and kids almost always chew for a little bit, and then they get this smile. And then the next thing she did is she danced in her chair. She's like, yes, herring eggs. So, the robes were beautiful. And then I asked Jennifer to work once again with Jennifer on a robe that represents Western management of the fishery, that represents what has happened to the herring. And this is, can you put your arms out? And so this is what she came up with. So these are, the herring you can see are made of gold. It's that chasing of the money. And I've had conversations with some of the fishermen, and they're like, and I tell them this is, you know, we need our herring eggs. They're cultural, they're spiritual, they're historical for us. And then they say, well, what about the money? We won't be able to really talk about this until you understand what they are to us. And so this was her interpretation, using the gold in place of the money. And then you can see these are military buttons around it. And if you could turn around, please. Thank you for being my model. And also it's embroidered. I welcome you to come look at it, with an actual the size of the herring nets that they use. You can't really see it until you see it up close. And then the style of the front is unlike other robes, because it is more along the lines of like the red coats of the military that came in the first colonization. And then finally, they're finished off with shell casings. And, you know, when I think about this, it's like, it's really beautiful, right? It's really beautiful. And, you know, to me, I think about why we need to know our history, because a lot of times with media, with television, you know, the Western way of consumption looks really inviting. And it seems like, yes, Western civilization has provided so much for us. But the truth is, once you take a closer look, it really hasn't. It has taken so much from us. And you know, that's the importance of art, that's the importance of, you know, knowing our story, is to take a look. You know, what does this really mean? I want to see, you know, I know so much about herring. I never thought I would know that much. And I want to see beautiful silver herring in the water, laying their eggs to nourish us as pliget people, to nourish the whales, to nourish everybody in the ocean, all of our relatives. And I know we're going to do a few other things as well before we close out here. But I would really love to encourage all of you, you know, you can come, I know this is heavy, to come up and look at the robe and think about colonization and think about Western civilization and think about how can we set intentions to heal from colonization, and how do we put that energy out there on a daily basis, because it's real. You know, that's what's affecting us. And I don't think that, you know, I lived with it for so long that I didn't realize being educated in the Western world. I didn't know. I always knew there was something wrong. I knew there was something wrong with the fact that all of my friends were being kicked out of school. They all started dying at 16. They all were not doing well. And it wasn't until I started learning the history. When I was young, when I was using, when I was drinking, I was so devastated. It's like, why are so many of my friends dying? And then as I started learning the history, it's a miracle so many of us have survived. Because those of us who are surviving are absolutely resilient, brilliant, and wonderful. So, thank you for your time. I'm hoping that Brian, bless his heart, I'm not technologically savvy whatsoever. And, you know, I would have these beautiful pictures that would coincide with what I was saying, but it didn't. But there are still some photos. I hope that we can run some of the hui, some of the border fish. And I think that the last thing, I testified before the Board of Fish in Sitka in 1997 and helped organize a group of people to testify. Many of them were elders, and at the Board of Fish we get 3 minutes. We get 3 minutes to tell the Board of Fish why herring are important. And this had been going on, and it was probably, you know, the same 3 or 4 elders and culture bearers that went to the Board of Fish year after year. And when we had the Kuik, that was a huge inspiration for going to the elders and asking if we could do this. Because we needed a place to be able to be who we are and really express our love and affection for the land and the ocean, and especially the herring. And it was so, I had never seen our elders and our culture bearers smile so much. They got up at the Kuik and they talked about remembering when the herring were from the furthest south point to the furthest part, point north, east, and west, and just how much things had changed, but all of their beautiful memories of seeing Sitka Sound just full of herring, of being able to stick a paddle in the water and have it stand up on its own. There were so many herring and so many herring eggs. And I think that that's, again, part of this is we have to be enchanted in the world in which we live. We need to understand that every time I go out, I see something different. And I was fortunate to be able to take in May and a couple of other people before we started the work, before the Kuik. And I was like, I'm going to take you to one of my favorite places. And so we went out and I said, okay, now I'm going to take you someplace else. And I was like, I think this is my favorite place. And then I took them to another place. I said, no, I think this actually I think might be my favorite place. And here's my favorite tree. And here's my favorite beach. And here's my, And when I go out and during every single season, whether it's rainy, whether it's sunny, whether it's windy, it is so beautiful. And every time I go out, the beauty is different. And if you don't have that in your life, try to find it. Try to find it. Get out there as much as you can. Because it's only been within the last few years that I've been going out. And I really, that's my hope. My hope for all of you is that you find a way to be enchanted with where you live, and that you find a way to remember that you are sacred and that everybody in this room is sacred and everything on this earth is sacred. So go to Chish. So, we are, I'm not sure. Yeah, we're gonna dance. We're gonna dance. And please join us. That's the other thing, is like sometimes I belong to a dance group, but then I also, like for the Kuik, so every time I have practice and it's a beautiful day and I go, I don't want to go. And then my daughter will say, come on, Mom. And then I go, and then by the end of the practice, it's like, no, let's do one more song. Really? We'll camp here. You never should have said I could stay up there. Okay, I really do hope that you can make it down to K'asheechtlaa next April. It was amazing. We've had 350 people. The other thing is that there's some photos. Okay, so it was amazing. So this is what we talk about as far as Tlingit people. I told you I composed the song last year, and then I was unable to come up with, I thought we needed a new song for this new road, and it didn't come to me. And so, the Monday before the Kui, I thought, okay, we have this thing called muffling the drum, and instead of singing a song, you just like, you just pound it like that. And so that's what we decided to do. So, gee, I haven't danced in a while. So what we had, what we did is we had all of the robes come out and dance, and then we had the shame robe. We also call it the shame robe for the Alaska Department of Fish and Game for not listening to us for 25 years. We can undesignate it as their shame robe when they listen to us. And it will become something different. But, so it was really beautiful. Shakshani Ish was off stage, and we had all of the robes out there dancing. And then when he came out, one by one the herring left, until it was the herring lady. And it was really beautiful because it was a young Kiksadi woman who is expecting a child in July, so it's absolutely perfect. And so when it was just the herring lady and the shame robe left, they danced around each other, and the herring lady came out and was able to chase this robe that represents the colonizers, the extractive industries off of the stage. Because that's what it is. It's like, when we fight, when we are, when we know that our way of life, our spiritual life, is so much stronger than a way that really has no soul, we will, I hate to put things in win or lose, but that spiritual way of life is so much stronger. And I'm so grateful that, I get to grow all of the time in understanding that. Our way of life is so powerful, and quit doubting, that we don't have science, we have things that are much more powerful. The other thing that we did, which was really amazing, we had 70 cedar baskets that were woven as what we call fire dishes. And a lot of times now with Ku'is, people order the bowls off Amazon. But we had people weaving for 5 months maybe down at the Alaska Native Brotherhood Hall. And so we were able to give our fire dishes out in the form of red cedar baskets, red and yellow cedar baskets. Also, I was saying earlier, I think I was wrong. We did order the tea bags from Amazon, but other than that, everything else was locally sourced. Everybody got a jar of seal oil, which, I'm going to say it wrong, I'm sorry, I looked it up. Peter Williams and I did a trade, herring eggs for seal oil. And seal, okay, anyway, I can just go on. But anyway, so part of that is that, there are some people that probably don't have potlatches and kuis because a lot of times people use money. We also made tanas, small tanas out of copper, and I think we made 150 of those. And, we couldn't do it alone. It was just amazing to build that community. We're big potluckers. And, and we just came together. There were just so many amazing things. I had one in Jackson. He probably gave up because I was going to ask him to say, he's all the way in the back. He's young, he can run up here. I had one in Jackson to say a few words because, I just have so much respect for our co-conspirators, i.e. allies, who can see the value in what we're doing. And I just wanted him to share a little bit of what he learned, is learning, and go to teach for bringing the robes out.
Okay. Definitely still learning lots. I'm definitely still learning lots, and I haven't been involved in activism and trying to be a co-conspirator, as Louise said, for very long, only about 10 years, but I think the most important lesson that I've learned in Alaska is that if you want to be on the front lines, to look and see where the indigenous women are. And in a lot of my early activism in Alaska, I had a lot of energy and a lot of privilege and a lot of resources, but I didn't necessarily know what to do with them. And that led to frustration for myself, but also for the communities that I thought I was trying to help. And the most important thing that I've learned, and the most impactful thing for me about being a part of the Herring Protectors, has been to simply step back and follow the lead of amazing people like Louise and Paulette and Pat Alexander and Lakota Hardin and others who have been a part of this community. And I think we see that in this space too here at the summit over the weekend. And I won't take up any more space than that, except to say that it's been an honor to follow Louise and others in the community trying to protect the herring.
Julian is here. I won't ask you to say anything. Javier. We have this running joke. We had, so it was really cool. We had some journalists come in and folks that were working on documenting the process. And we call him Julian because our friend Paulette, who's amazing, she was here. She's a harvester, and she's like this tall, but you will listen to her if you hear her voice. She will like. So Javier and Julian, Brave Noise Cat, and a young lady, Brett, were all working on stories. And when they come to town, I call Paula and I'm like, Paula, you have to go out today. You have to go out today. We have some people to take out. And then she'd come back and she's like, Louise, I put them to work. I said, put that camera down and come help you pull these branches. So they got, a really first-hand experience. There's the herring lady drum. And got to experience firsthand what it's like to be able to go out on a boat and be able to harvest. And those are the dancers there with branches, dancing with branches. And they were just so cool, yes. And there was so much dancing, so much sharing, so much singing. And that's the herring lady and the grove. That's like what perfect. I love that shot. But so I really hope that you got something out of this, and that you take some of the love and some of the excitement and some of the energy that we have for being a part of this, for being blessed with. I feel so blessed every single day to be on my homelands and to be who I am, and I thank Creator every day for making me who I am as a Tlingit woman, with all of the challenges and with all of the sorrows and all of the things that have come through my life. I have such a blessed life because of all of you. K'asheechtlaa.